Feeling scared and on edge in your home is one of the worst experiences I've ever had. We're all animals to some extent and need to feel safe when we lay our head at night. You never know when you'll be placed in a situation that makes you catch your breath and heart race. It's unpredictable. And yet that is where the ones we love are, the ones who hurt us. Each day a child wakes up in a home where they don't feel safe or loved due to the abuse that their parents inflict on them. Today I will be going over 3 different types of abuse, why the abusers do these horrible acts, and finally the solution to decreasing the number of children who are being abused. Approximately 5 children die every day from child abuse. Think of all the present cases that go unreported. The 3 main types of abuse are physical, sexual, and emotional, which all result in physical and mental health problems throughout the victim's lifetime. According to the research article, Patterns of Childhood Abuse and Neglect, in a representative German population sample in July 2016, participants that reported neglect and abuse showed the highest severity of depression and general anxiety. Emotional abuse is just as psychologically traumatizing as any form of abuse. Verbal abuse falls into this category, which is the constant belittling and threatening of physical or sexual abuse. Emotional abuse gives a child low self-esteem, which affects all aspects of their life. This intensity of bullying that comes from the people who are supposed to love us teach us to believe that if we are not enough for our parents, then we are not enough for anyone or anything. As shown in this sample, these children grow into adults who have developed severe depression or anxiety. As stated by Pain Medicine, Volume 21 in April 2020, experiencing childhood emotional abuse and remained independently and positively associated with reporting moderate to severe pain interference by adults who inject drugs. Some children who survive the child abuse will turn to drugs to cope with the chronic pain they feel throughout adulthood. Of the sample population, 41.5% of adults who inject drugs experience emotional abuse in their childhood. Emotional abuse can lead to multiple mental health issues like depression, anxiety, PTSD, and more, while simultaneously hindering their skills to manage these painful feelings that lead to frequent drug and alcohol use. Abuse not only hurts the child at the time, but the rest of their lives until they get the help needed. As stated by the Journal of Pediatric Nursing, Volume 44 in January 2019, being exposed to a form of maltreatment is associated with a host of harmful outcomes, including increased risk for cancer. Physical abuse is the beating or torturing of a child and can cause health risks for that individual later in life. A lot of abusers who inflict physical pain on their children also abuse alcohol to such an intensity that they take it out on a child. There are some carcinogens that these victims are subjected to, either in the home or later in life, due to the circumstances. For instance, victims of untreated trauma from child abuse usually turn to the overconsumption of alcohol to deal with their ongoing pain, which is influenced by the use of alcohol in their past abusive homes. The effects of children being abused can last a lifetime if the child can survive their torture. Now that we have analyzed the different types of abuse, we will continue by going over the motives of the abusers. The most complex portion of child abuse is why the perpetrators do what they do and get away with it for so long. As written in the article Child Abuse on Psychology Today in April 2019, a combination of individual, relational, community, and societal factors contribute to the risk of child maltreatment and abuse. Children are never responsible for the harm inflicted upon them, but certain individual characteristics have been found to increase a child's risk of being maltreated. Some of these characteristics include the child having a disability that causes caregiver burden, domestic violence between parents, caregivers don't have a proper understanding of child development, substance abuse in the home, and poverty. Speaking from personal experience, my dad was severely depressed and struggling financially, resulting in self-medicating using alcohol and abusing his wife and kids. His mental illness could have been treated if he had gone to therapy or sought out a healthy form of treatment. A strong factor as to why parents abuse their children is stress. According to the Questia article, posted September 2007, rarely do we think about how stressful it is for soldiers' wives who are left behind when their husbands are deployed. The spouse must take on all of the responsibilities that formerly had been handled by both parents. Raising a child is a challenge in itself, but being a single parent makes it so much harder. There are a lot of things a child needs just to survive, like food, a home with functioning utilities, and other forms of basic care. However, children need more than just that. They need proper validation from their parents, attention, social interaction, school, and etc. It is overwhelming to provide all of that, especially as a single parent when you have more than one child. Due to the stressful circumstances, the mother inflicts physical abuse on the child, Some parents' actions seem unfathomable, and yet they still manage to get away with it. As shown in the documentary, The Trials of Gabriel Fernandez, released in 2020, the system had failed to do their job, which resulted in Gabriel Fernandez's death. Gabriel Fernandez died May 24, 2013 from blunt force trauma inflicted by his mother and her boyfriend. He had lived with them for 8 months and suffered intense abuse such as strangling, being forced to eat cat litter, shot with a BB gun, sprayed in the face with pepper spray, being locked in a cabinet most days and nights, and so much more. There had been multiple reports to CPS, but because of poor judgment and lack of effort, Gabriel died from this torturous child abuse at only 8 years old. The parents will always lie about hitting their child if the police show up at their doorstep. Gabriel's mother did this on multiple occasions, which didn't lead to any investigation. The atrocious acts are carried out for this long by lack of reporting and by bystanders, and poor effort of the system. Now that we have analyzed why the abusers do such heartless acts and how the system lets them get away with it, let's analyze what needs to be changed and the solution steps. As a child in an abusive home, there is nothing you can really do. That is why we rely on the system and bystanders to help create a solution for this horrendous issue. As written in the article published by the Chicago Tribune on April 27, 2019, Department of Child and Family Services missed telltale signs of trouble despite repeated hotline calls and police reports that documented squalid living conditions, substance abuse, domestic violence, suspicious bruises, and at times uncooperative parents that led to the death of Andrew Freund. The 5-year-old was found buried in a shallow grave after being fatally beaten. There had been multiple reports about the boy living in poor conditions or having unexplainable bruises. DCFS required Andrew Freund's mother to take him to the doctor, who couldn't identify the cause of the bruise. They did not require her to take Andrew to visit a pediatric doctor that is board certified in child abuse injuries, closing the case on July 4th, 4 months prior to Andrew's death, on April 15th. As a bystander, there are some visible signs of abuse to be aware of. If seen, should be reported to Child Protective Services immediately. According to the article Child Abuse and Neglect, posted on helpguide.org, February 14, 2020, abusive behavior comes in many forms, but the common denominator is the emotional effect on the child. Whether the abuse is a slap, a harsh comment, stony silence, or not knowing if there will be dinner on the table, the end result is a child that feels unsafe, uncared for, and alone. Some signs of emotional and physical abuse are anxious or fearful behavior, being aggressive or extremely passive, frequently unexplained injuries, wearing inappropriate clothing or makeup to cover bruises, or doesn't want to go home. Neglect is also a form of abuse that can be identified if the child is coming to school dirty or hungry, frequently absent or late to school, or having untreated injuries or illnesses. Finally, sexual abuse can be recognized if the child has odd or sexual behavior or knowledge, trouble walking or sitting, blood in the underwear, or avoiding a certain person without an obvious reason. To report any of these incidents, you should call an abuse hotline or Child Protective Services directly. The best way to help a child in an unsafe situation is to bring awareness. Local and state precautions are also being made to help these children in need. As stated by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on March 5, 2019, the CDC's Division of Violence Prevention is funding 7 health departments, including California, to implement the 4 goals to execute state framework. The 4 plans are coordinating with other child maltreatment prevention organizations and others to assure stable environments, working with partners to align strategies with other sectors, report on the strategies implemented, and to document the state-level impact of the completed efforts. In San Diego, there is the Polinsky Center that gives housing to children under the age of 18 and is open all hours of the week. The system is responsible for helping those children, but when the system fails, it is up to local organizations and bystanders to be their aid. 674,000 children were determined to be victims of abuse in 2017. This is unacceptable, and awareness must be spread to conquer this unfortunate dilemma. Today we have examined abuse and its effects, how perpetrators do what they do and get away with it, and finally the consequences of a failing system and the solutions. Child abuse is a battle that is far from over. There are multiple children who are suffering greatly right now that need help. There could be a child that you know of that is in an unsafe home. Even if you are just a stranger to them and notice the signs, it is better to be safe than sorry. I survived my child abuse by chance, but there are children who aren't as lucky. It is a struggle to not only battle the years of trauma my dad inflicted on me, but to watch my 3 siblings and mother to overcome their individual grief. Any child could be the subject of mistreatment that will lead to the suffering for the remainder of their life. This is why bystanders, it is our job to help victims by reporting suspicious behavior.